indicted by the SEC today he has a fund, and he has apparently defrauded his listeners and his investors of an estimated $11 million that he was using to quote unquote buy properties that he was building with his community, and instead used it to, buy NBA courtside season tickets and like a bunch of other bullshit. What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It is the Mike and Dan show where I, Mike DeHaan, and my co-host here, Dan Austin, talk about real estate investing, business, and whatever else we're working on that week. So thanks for joining us today, guys. And Dan, we have a huge topic to discuss today.
What is it?
Integrity.
That's why I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, you don't have any of that, right? Yeah, we're wholesalers. I don't know what the fuck that means.
Yeah, we're wholesalers. Integrity.
No, this is it's actually just been an interesting reoccurring topic, I guess, that's come up both in our instant investor like coaching program, and then also with our partnership program around like renegotiating contracts and following through with contracts when you negotiate them with sellers, and kind of the appropriate way to approach that, the do's and don'ts of it. And it's one of those things that's come up enough times, and also we have been in this game for long enough that we've had to do renegotiations. We've had to adjust stuff. We've had people completely burn us by not following through on their end. So I just thought it was something that would be appropriate to start with, because apparently what seems like it should be obvious isn't. Like, I don't know why.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe just people are like more concerned about their self-interest than we are. We're just too nice. But
yeah, I think that people tend to forget that they're in the business of helping people, and then they really just get into the mindset of helping themselves and what is the best thing for them. And one of the worst things that when you're in this business, in kind of generally in like a real estate service business, we'll call it that, like the worst mindset you can get into is like thinking only about the return on investment. How much money am I going to make on this deal? And how does that translate to some arbitrary or somewhat arbitrary percentages? Because the seller or your end buyer, whoever, it doesn't really friggin' matter what your ROI is. They don't care what ROE is. They don't care that your base flip profit's $25K and doing this transaction this way is going to only make it $22K. Like, when you start thinking with that mindset, you start making really shitty decisions on behalf of other people that affect massive parts of their lives.
I mean, and a lot of that tends to get forgotten. So I guess just for some context here about the stuff that we're talking about. So, we've had a couple situations recently where we've had like partners, for example. And so our partnership program works is we basically run the acquisition side for other investors in different markets. We close the deals, they figure out the disposition, or they become the end buyer. And we have basically a pre-established relationship about what that looks like and how everyone gets compensated. And we've had this very reoccurring issue with people that I would say are like, I assume are high integrity people, just based off of how we know them and different things, where we are getting to the deadline, like not even the due diligence deadline, but like to the couple of days before closing, and all of a sudden they are trying to renegotiate the price. They are trying to walk away from the deal. They are trying to, get a a conventional loan, which is going to extend things 45 days all of a sudden. Like all this sort of bullshit that is completely avoidable if you just go by like a traditional real estate process and you focus on how you can help the person out with the situation. Because, some of those things are people just ignorance, right? But the problem is, as well, is realize more often than not with these situations, you have people that like they rely on that money coming in for some personal situation, right? They have like a major debt or liability that you are bailing them out of. That is the reason that you are able to buy these properties for 60, 70 cents on the dollar. And then all of a sudden you start extending things out, or you start to back away from things. Like that can cause people super major financial distress, right? And there are like sleazy people out there that use this as a sales tactic. I remember being in this group a while back, that this was like years and years ago, and it was like a newer group that I don't even know how I connected with these people. And literally what they taught like their little flock, they're like, this is how I make an extra $10,000 per deal. It's like, you wait until the day before closing or like the day of closing, and you call them up and you say like, hey, I can't close unless we're down at like 190 instead of 200. Sorry. And he's like, and they know they've already moved out. Like, they're heavily motivated to get the deal done. This guy thought that he was like the smoothest dude. I'm like, dude, that's fucked up, man. Like, you're already have a situation where these people are giving up a lot, and now you're trying to squeeze them for extra. Yep. And it's one of those things that it gives the whole industry a super bad name. And like, really, for what? For like a small amount of financial gain in the big picture, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
And that's why, like, I always said that with people that are doing that from B2B, like trying to scrape a few $1,000 out of a relationship with another business owner. We do a lot of things with other wholesalers, other flippers, other investors in town. And the minute that you try to take a little bit more off the top just because you can, you're going to really ruin that relationship. Mm-hmm. And you might not get caught that one time, but you're going to get caught eventually. And just because you're not repeat business with these sellers doesn't mean you don't want to do good by them. Like, you really need to focus on supporting and doing the right thing, because all too often you're faced with these decisions where you can be in the gray area or you can just make the right damn decision.
Yeah. I think ultimately the biggest thing is you shouldn't be locking up properties unless you like have the intention of closing on it, right? Or if it is something that you're going to be trying to figure out, trying to wholesale, you're not going to be able to get it done, or like you're going to, you got to shoot your shots too. I fully understand that, but let it go during the due diligence period. Don't try to like drag it out forever because you can't find a buyer, and you talk to some like fucking Keegley dork, which is like a fake ass company, dispo shop, right? That's like, oh, well, we need to do a group walkthrough in 2 weeks. Can you do that? No, don't do that, right? Yep. Yes. Follow your process, keep things in the due diligence. Then if you have to renegotiate at that point, it's fine because that was pre-established early. But if you're dragging stuff out and you're getting these people's hopes up, like that just creates such a huge issue. And
if you're not sticking to your word, right? So say you sign a contract with somebody and you say you're going to close in 30 days, but in 29 days you decide not to close, or you decide to extend it. Like, you gave them your word, and the situation, generally speaking. So say you knew that they were going to move out because they were going to use these funds to buy an RV or do whatever the hell they did. And we've ran into this with sellers before where we know like they are making major life transactions between now and closing because they have to, because of whatever situation, or maybe that's how they are and they're going to make some poor life decisions afterwards. But by you delaying to the last minute, fully well knowing what you're trying to do, you're trying to sell the contract, and within 3 days of getting this thing under contract, you're not going to sell it. I mean, really, the rest of it's you just like pissing time away and doing whatever you're doing. And so like, be good to your word and like be open and honest as often as possible and as early as possible. Right. And so I think people get really caught up in this is they aren't quite honest with what they're going to try to do, what they're doing. Like, our contract says fully, like, we are investors and we're going to make a profit on your house as early as the day we buy it from you.
Yeah.
It's right there in the contract.
Like, literally. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if it's something that like people, they just treat it too much of like a business to business relationship and they don't understand. But like, especially when it comes to the relationship with the seller, it's just so important to realize that even though you're excited about the deal, for a lot of these people, we are the last option. Right.
Totally. And in this, like, I'll add to, like, from a newer perspective, like new investors, like, we'll see this quite often. They're so hungry to get a deal, they will go in and they'll get a deal locked up too high. You might be negotiating with the seller and they're like, hey, so-and-so said that they'll give me 50,000 higher. And you're like, well, they're never going to execute on that. What do? You're in that weird situation. That's going to happen. They're not going to execute on it. And so I'm bringing that up because it's like, if you're new, you need to get skilled up. You need to learn how to do this stuff before you start putting people's livelihood like in the palm of your hand and then crushing it, because you just don't have the skills. Because you may very well screw somebody over because you went too high because you have no idea how to calculate ARV, or you're just super hungry for your first deal. Or you may very well may screw a seller over because you just don't have the skills to sell it or to dispo it or to creatively come up with a good pricing structure that makes sense for that seller. So get skilled up, go find people that are doing this and learn how to do it the right way from the start so you don't turn into a shitbag loser.
Yeah, at the very end of it, which has just been so reoccurring. And ultimately, I think it comes down to intent, right? Like, if you have to You know, like if your full intent the entire time is to close on it, or is to like help the person out, or is to, you know, assign it, whatever, and you are transparent as things change, as the opportunity changes, and you make that, you know, very apparent to the seller as early as possible, that's fine. Stuff happens, whatever.
Yep.
But it's when you're letting things go on for the entire length of the duration of the contract, and then, you know, you put down 55 cents in a box of Cracker Jacks as your earnest money, and then you're walking away, right? Like that's a super major issue. But
yeah, don't listen to the people that are like, you don't need your own money, use other people's money. And you know what? Never sign a document that personally guarantees any of your stuff, or never do this, never do that. It's like, that's basically just saying, be prepared to screw this person over because you have no skin in the game.
For sure.
That's kind of shitty.
But yeah, anyway, there's something I want to bring up. I guess good general rule to finish that up, and how we've sort of always acted has been, as you go through the process, you have those conversations. If you put like the situation of like, it's your grandma who's the seller, how would you feel if it was like a third party, like you're a third party talking to your grandma with the stuff that you're doing with the seller? And if you feel even a little bit iffy about it, don't do it. Right? You know, or like as people get really into the weeds at this, think about if this conversation that you're having, this transaction you're putting together, if this was on the front page of your local paper, would you look good or would you look bad? Okay. And if it's something that they can put out like a hit article on you about, definitely don't do it.
It's not a good test. Or that is a good test. Right. It's a good test to not fail.
So, but anyways, yeah, it's just a reoccurring thing. And like I said, make sure you're shooting your shots, because like, you know, don't be so worried about being able to fully execute that you don't take opportunities, but just be transparent about stuff. If you're unsure, if things aren't looking good, if you're going to need to be dropping it, you know, are going to need to be doing a price adjustment. Just don't wait until they've like put down money on an apartment, they've moved out, or like they've already committed to buying another property and now they're not going to get the money. Like all that does is hurts the seller, it hurts you, and it hurts the industry as a whole.
Right. Yeah. Don't be afraid to have the tough conversation, because that's really what it is sometimes.
Absolutely. So cool. Right. Outside of that, what else do we have going on? Got some close a couple deals. We finally got that frickin' double close, maybe done.
We'll know tomorrow
if we get some money on it.
We'll know tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's only like 3 weeks past the original close date or something. 2 weeks past it.
And this goes back to what I was talking about, though, man. Like
this goes back to not necessarily having low integrity, but because of maybe lack of empathy or understanding for people's situations, you just kind of like, man, I just, you know, I'll get to it when I get to it. Meaning that, you know, like there's certain things when you buy a property, especially if you're using hard money lender, knowing the hard money lender you're going to use, what kind of hard money are you getting? What are they going to require from you? And being on top of that so that you can get through the process. Because hard money lenders can be dicks and they can slow your process down if you're not on top of your shit. I've always been by the book of like, get the people asking you for stuff, whatever they need, as soon as you can, like as fast as you can, because you're no longer the one restricting or being the bottleneck for that process.
Yeah, and stuff like that always going to take longer than you think. It's like a title and escrow company, right? It's like when you have people that are like, oh, can you close in 5 days? And you think, yeah, it's like realistically your title and escrow company can't handle that, right? Most of the time. And then lenders, especially if you're using like the national lenders, this is something that I guess we learned over the years, and newer investors, they kind of go through this same thought process. There's a couple kind of hard money lenders, right? There's like the local hard money lender that's like a traditional hard money lender. They'll know the market. They'll kind of know the neighborhoods. They'll probably own some properties in the area. Usually they're just like rich dudes with money, you know, or they have like a small fund, and they're like, yeah, we'll give you these loans. It'll be between like 10 and sometimes 14% and a couple points. You know, we'll have you put 10% down. We'll be able to do it, just have your credit report and photos and things like that. And a lot of people kind of start there, but then after a while, start doing more projects like, damn, that's like really expensive. And we did the same thing. Everyone starts going, well, what about these national hard money lenders? You know, like the Kiavis and like the lending ones, and the, you know, Easy Street Capitals are some of the big ones out there, right? And those would be cheaper on paper, right? They'll be 9 to 11% plus like 1 or 2 points instead of 3 or 4. But the problem is, after a while, the hoops that they make you jump through are absolutely insane to get these freaking deals done, because they don't know your market. They don't know the full situation. And I guess half the time when we were using those over the years, they would like try to retrade us like the day of closing. Like how many times did freaking Lending One call us on the day of closing? And it's like, I know we said 10% down, and now actually it's 17.5% down.
Yeah. Or they'll be like, what is that like random $18,000 fee you put in there?
Yeah, right.
Like there's definitely some different fees because they might say it's 1 point, but then there's like other fee structures in there.
Or the worst was when freaking Kiavi made us go and we had to like Zoom call with their underwriter because they didn't understand the house. So we're like in this like halfway house with these people on like a Zoom call, like going around and like showing them the layout of it so they can like verify the size or something. Like it was such a dumb situation, like 2 days before closing. And the seller's like, oh, I thought you were buying cash and now you have to do this with your lender. Like what the hell? It's just such a stupid conversation.
You're like, well, technically we are. It's just not our
Yeah, right. It's a cash-like purchase, like it's as is.
Yeah.
But it's. I will say that I think that everyone sort of goes through that arc depending on how much volume they want to do. When you're new, you need the easier money to give you a shot. When you're kind of like small, you're doing a few deals a year, those extra closing costs are a big deal to you. And then when you start doing a lot of volume, you're just like, I just need ease and simplicity. Because like for me to go and do a freaking Zoom walkthrough at a property with a lender is worth like that time is worth more than the points I'm going to be saving.
Yeah, that time could be you on the phone closing another deal, walking another property, making sure your contractor's doing the right thing on a flip. Like that time is way more valuable at that point.
Yeah. But I know it's just always the little sort of details people need to figure out as they get into it. And one of the challenging things I think with that whole piece too is you can talk to like all these different lenders on the phone and understand, you guys, like when you work with private money like this, they're salespeople. They're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. And then
they get paid by the loan.
Yeah, and then as soon as it gets past the salesperson to like the underwriter, that's when the real process starts. And you're not going to know what that looks like until you're kind of down that path.
And from my experience, the sales guy said a bunch of shit that's not true. And the underwriter's like, why is this form that you're supposed to fill out not filled out? Why is none of this stuff done? Now the underwriter has to do it all. And that's what's really taking your loan so long. The sales guy just got you to say yes, and now they're trying to figure it out.
Well, it's just like, getting a conventional Fannie Freddie home loan too is the same thing.
Right.
It's less hoops than that usually. But, it's just like a whole other process. And
yeah, there's a place for it. Like you said, there's a place, a time, and a place in your arc of your business when that stuff works out and it's good. And like we still refer people to like Kiavi and stuff like that. Like they have a need or they have a solution for your needs. So
yeah, and it just going back to the integrity piece with that though. If you're gonna have those hiccups, just let your freaking lender know ahead of time.
Yeah.
Sorry, your seller, so you're not showing up there again trying to do a Zoom call and they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah, and that also goes back to talking to your lender often and early too, and keeping that conversation going. Because if you don't talk to them, they'll probably be like the day before closing, which is what they tend to do. Oh, we're not going to make closing. You're like, well, that would have been nice to know a week ago.
Yeah,
and they did know a week ago because they didn't even start working on your file until 2 days ago.
And that's exactly why this freaking double close is taking so long. It's because they just didn't do anything until the last minute. But so anyway, so getting that one figured out, and then I know you have a couple renos doing. We talked about the bed bugs last week. We talked about the seller finance that we're working on. The lease to own that we're working on. And all in all, we're rocking pretty good. Our new sales guy is off to a good start. He got his
first contract in 2 weeks.
Contract last week. Yeah, and he's got a couple more that he was like he's pursuing pretty good that should be getting signed around. Which is always a good feeling to get, like, I think for a sales guy to get an early win like that is just always such an important proof of concept.
Right. It is kind of nice to get that early win. That's the little low-hanging fruit to grab it in and get to test and then retest. And then they go into their death of despair for a while, which everybody goes through every once in a while.
Yeah, especially, it's such a cyclical thing. This is something that's always so hard for people, and this is, there's always this cash flow problem, which we talked about before, because you're expending money on marketing, you're buying property and whatever, and you have to wait for it all to come back. But for some reason, the way that the moon aligns with the earth or something, I don't know what it is with sellers, where for years the same pattern has reoccurred. You are like not getting responses, people don't want to move forward, don't want to do anything, and all of a sudden over the course of like a week, like 6 people will be ready to sign. And it's the same. This happened over and over and over and over again. So you've been doing this now for the last 4 years. And
it all averages out. You just have to be playing the game to actually reap the rewards of the average. You can't quit after a down month.
Yeah, exactly. And for sales guys, it can be tough. So, but yeah, it's funny with the sales guys. Another recurring question we've been getting recently is what we do to train them. which I always think is really funny. And I'll say first off, like our training for our sales guys, it isn't like awesome. We definitely live on like a trial by fire sort of basis. You know, we give them the basis of what they need to know for our business, and then we put them in and make them get to work. But here's the thing, guys, if you're worried about how to train people about like what a wholesale business looks like, or, you know, what a general negotiation can look like and those sort of things, realize that there has been a whole movement of content towards people that want to be authority experts. You know, we're kind of the same with this as well. Yeah. But there are people that want to be the sales experts. And if you just go on YouTube, you can find all sorts of videos from like random people that have like all the general sales stuff that you're going to tell your person anyway. Just have them watch those videos. Just like who, not how, but do it via content, as opposed to trying to build these super elaborate sales trainings for your internal staff all the time.
Yeah. And there's not very much variation between what one person's going to say on YouTube versus the other. Right. So it's not like you're going to go way wrong unless you like get the really shitty dude who's talking about like price dropping people the day before closing.
Yeah, right.
You want to avoid that guy. But in general, like you can also pay, and you're probably not going to go too wrong. I think the main key is getting enough reps in and actually doing reviews of your work and looking at like, okay, so what happened to this? Even the ones you get, right? Like if it's a contract you got or didn't get, like what went good and bad on both sides of the spectrum. Because sometimes just because you got a seller to sign a contract, that doesn't mean what you did was actually the best thing. Like you could have still failed but succeeded, if you know what I mean. Like it could have just been one of those weird situations where in another situation where you say the exact same thing, the seller's like, no, I'm not biting on that one, dummy. And so you got to listen to all your successes and failures and see really what's working and keep sharpening your tool over and over again, because it's a perishable skill.
For sure. And I think that's the thing that most people, especially when they're small operators, tend to overlook, is they think like, okay, so I have initial training that I do, and now I just kind of like let people roam free. But you're completely right. It's an axe that needs to be regularly sharpened. And I know for us, where we've seen some of the most value in terms of like our sales guys' growth has been, you know, twice a week we've been doing these call reviews where we'll have, you know, one of the sales guys volunteers, they send a call. We typically try to have it be like an offer call, a renegotiation call, or an intake call, usually one that they felt didn't go great. We listen to it on our kickoff meeting, and then we review it all collectively. And you can learn an incredible amount by just like listening to other people have the same conversations that you're going to have, or that the other team members are going to have, right? And there's just like, you know, there's obviously the hard sales tactics that you can learn, but also you'd be surprised at how many things you pick up about. You're like, why did I say that? Like, that's not how our business operates. It just kind of like came out in like the spur of the moment, right? Or like, why didn't you sort of like recognize this opportunity of like a seller finance, you know, and like see if they paid off the loan, like how much do they owe on it, like all these different things. And you do that enough times, enough reps, and people's, I guess, like knowledge and their situational awareness begins to grow. You know, it's kind of like how like a professional sports team watches like a game tape, right? You start to see different patterns and different things that, you know, will allow you to not make those same mistakes in the past. And it's one of the things that I will say is the hardest to do when you're a small operator, because it feels extremely personal. Like I remember when we had our first sales manager, and it was like just us, or it was like just me and her, and we were doing like a call review, and it was hard not to do it without sounding like a dick, right? Like the whole time, because you're just sitting there listening to only her on the recording, and then you're trying to like provide feedback, but everything sounds pointed, you know, versus like when you're in a group of people, you can be like, oh yeah, this is like a collective learning thing that we're doing, and it's easier to get away with that. But it's super, super necessary.
Yeah, it is absolutely necessary. And I think what you said there that's super key that I pull from this is the people that are better at this than others is mostly about opportunity recognition. Of course, you can't be an idiot and you can't like stumble and not be able to talk to people. You got to be able to talk to people and have a conversation and build rapport. But like you have to be able to recognize opportunity in the moment, because now, like what we talk about, now you can solve the problem in the moment, as opposed to what you see with a lot of new folks is they're like, I can close fast. I have cash. It's like, that is not the offer. That is like one of the things, that's one of your tools. That's the most common tool we use, but that's not the solution, right? Like your solution is helping them get out of their situation, but sometimes their situation is not fixed by a fast close. So being able to recognize that opportunity and say, you know what, this person that's 75 years old, he's a really good landlord. He knows what he's doing, and he wants mailbox money. Well, we just need to pivot this right away and recognize that because of his circumstances, his experience, and what he's saying, and then shift the conversation to, what about you being the bank? Now you've recognized opportunity, and now you've pivoted away from a dead deal right away because you couldn't offer the cash he wants, but now you can switch it to something that actually perks his interest and will work for you, and now you can continue to down that path of the sales conversation with him.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like how you know your professional status is when you have the ability to do that with this. And like all the big guys out there that you see, that are out being influencers or whatever the hell's going on, the ones that are actually doing deals that are actually successful, even if they're selling a course on like Sub2 or Seller Finance or like Novations or whatever, understand that is just a tool in their toolbox. And even though they found that as like their niche or something that they specialize in, the ones that are really getting things done, they are good at recognizing the opportunities and becoming an opportunist when it's there. That's a big reason that like most of the time in our 7-figure investor calls and with our group, that's what we talk about. The vast majority of the time is like, hey, what's kind of like the play with like this deal? It's like, okay, well, cash purchase, we're off by like 50 grand, like what are the other sort of opportunities you can do? And I will say the solution to that is not to open up an LLC and, with the seller and like sell it back to them with them in like a second position or something just wacky, right? Doesn't make any sense. There's usually a lot more legit legal ways that you can do it that aren't going to make you borderline commit mortgage fraud.
Right.
But it's just learning about how to ask the right questions, how to structure different deals, the different forms and stuff that you need in place, and how to explain it to people that are not real estate educated, aka all of our sellers. And once you can overcome that, like that's when the world kind of becomes your oyster, honestly.
Yep. Recognizing that and being able to have the conversation. I think he also said like asking the right questions is really critical because when we do a lot of call reviews, you do enough of them, you can kind of see where the conversation is going to go and like how it's going to, maybe drag on or where the direction's starting to head based on what you're hearing the seller's like tone change. And so it's like, how do you keep asking the right questions to uncover what their motivations are so that you can apply a solution to that? And also in the meantime, like keeping that in the conversation in a positive direction, as opposed to like where, it's going to be a dead end and you just give them a shitty cash offer and they're like pissed off at you, or you're just trying to be super nice and you're afraid to give them an offer and the conversation just keeps going on, because on the other end of the line, they just want to know what you're going to pay them too. They want to know what solution you can provide. That's why they're talking to you.
Yeah, it's solutions business for a reason, right? That's why we say that. But anyways, we've gone into that a lot. Have you ever heard of this other podcast called The Cash Flow King?
I have not heard of that.
Me neither, but I guess he has like a pretty big real estate show. But anyway, he got indicted by the SEC today he has a fund, and he has apparently defrauded his listeners and his investors of an estimated $11 million that he was using to quote unquote buy properties that he was building with his community, and instead used it to, buy NBA courtside season tickets and like a bunch of other bullshit.
Really?
What's interesting, and I don't know who this guy is. I don't know anything about his show or like his audience or whatever. But it's when when the market starts to soften and fall out, all these sort of people start to come out of the woodwork, and all their stuff starts to, that when the Ponzi scheme fails, they can no longer raise enough money to keep paying their investors, is when all this stuff collapses, right? And we've seen this, obviously with this guy who apparently had a decent sized show, but we've seen this like in GoBundance and like other stuff too, where there's people that have like been longstanding members of that all of a sudden it's like, oh, that startup that you've been building for the last like 6 years that you've raised tons of dudes money on isn't a real thing, and you've basically just been raising more money to like pay off your other investors. Be very, very cautious out there, everybody, if you're doing any sort of passive investments or you're partnering with people, because, there have been more of these that I've heard of in the last 6 months than I think the past like 6 years combined. And I really think it's only the beginning of it, especially when all of these loans and stuff start getting called or start adjusting. It's going to get real ugly real fast.
Yeah, because there are a couple points here. It is a slippery slope, right? Because there is the there's the opportunity. So say you have an investment and it's not going as good as you want, but you just got to make it 6 more months. And you told those first investors that you'd give them quarterly distributions, right? So you have to go raise a little bit more capital, pay those quarterly distributions. Bingo, right there. You've just pretty much so created a Ponzi scheme where you're taking other people's money to pay back, your other investors. But it's a slippery slope because I can see how, you just need a little bridge loan. You need a little gap fill to get you through the end of this project. But then that project goes sideways. Now you're in big trouble. Now you have 2 people that you have to pay, and they're none the wiser. And that's why it's more important than anything when you're talking about like investing with people. The investment is just like, that's like one thing. The operator, the person you're actually investing with, is who you should be really underwriting. And I feel like as humans, not all the time, sometimes we're wrong, but our gut instinct tells us yes or no right away. And if you get that gut feeling, you're like, you know what, it's a great deal. They seem all right, but there's something I don't like about it. Just go with your gut, because there's 1,000 other options for where you could invest your money. There's millions of options where you could invest your money. It's not worth investing in a shitty operator that takes your money and buys courtside tickets with it.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll say, following your gut is one thing, but also like checking the proper, like just hard paper due diligence on stuff. So I actually just pulled up this guy's case.
That's a given.
Yeah. Well, but it's an easy thing to not do though. Like honestly, especially when you're involved, something that involves like a title process. And so I just pulled up this guy's whole case, and what he was doing is he was taking investors' money on first lien position real estate. Okay, so they said they would hold the first mortgage, and he'd pay them a pref. Okay, which is 9-10%, super standard. So instead of being a fund, it was actually tied to it. He would have them sign a promissory note and sign all the official documents, and would just never record it. And he just took the money. So like, as far as the person knew, like if you were a third party, you could just go and who knows, maybe he even had like an assistant with a fake title company that was acting at Washington State Title or whatever, that is like, oh yeah, just wire the money here and we'll record it. And then it was never getting recorded. And there was one property in particular, he had 20 promissory notes of $47,000 to different investors, none of which were ever recorded.
Oh my gosh.
So how do you even check that?
Wow. Well, you can't check it after the fact because he's already got your money, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to check it. You need to be using a third party to do this for you. I would not give somebody money that says they're going to, if it's being secured by a real estate asset, like truly is being secured, like in that. So the way that I'm hearing that is this is a deed of trust or a mortgage that will be securing this property, a 1-to-1 situation, or at least even a second position or something. So you should be going through a lawyer or a title company that's going to be able to do the recording for you. Granted, yes, you could walk down to the county court office and do it yourself, but I would say as a third party investor, you'd probably want a third party handling that. That's maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a better way to do it, but I think that's the right way to do it. Now, if you're going to be an LP in an investment, that's different. Now you need to be reviewing all the operator's documents and doing your due diligence to make sure that those documents are in your interest to protect you, as well as in the operator's interest to make sure that they're being held accountable to performance or whatever that performance should be. You have all those documents that you should be looking at. And then on that side of things, again, as an LP investor, underwriting that operator as an individual. Facebook stalking them, checking everything you can. If you're going to give them money, I mean, why not take a little bit extra time to figure out what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as like a general rule, if you have people that are asking for money from you that build their claim to fame by being someone that, goes to courtside NBA games and drives Ferraris and stuff, don't give them your money.
Yeah.
Like that should be a red flag.
I would rather invest. I would only invest with somebody that drives white Subarus. That's a trustworthy car.
That's just such a pointed comment because we have white Subarus. But yeah, look at this guy. This guy's on like bigger pockets and everything. Matthew Motil.
Just point of clarification. I do not have white Subarus.
Yeah, that's true. Me and my wife do. But I mean, you can do all sorts of due diligence on this guy's 21 years of experience.
So
posting on bigger pockets.
I'll be honest. My initial instinct, Granted, I'm a little bit biased. My initial instinct, that picture with him in the reddish pink shirt, is I would not invest with him.
Why?
I could see it in his eyes. It just, you can't trust him.
See, but now you have like a hindsight bias because you already know this.
I have a bias. I will admit that, but I'm like a dog, you know, like I can sniff your butt and know right away if you're a good person or not.
And if you guys want to see, this is great audio content. If you guys want to see this, you go check us out on YouTube. We're looking at his photos. Look at him. He's at the Cleveland Cavs game with his daughter. Yeah. You know, he's got a book.
The smile does soften him a little bit in that picture. I will say that. Okay, I'll give him that.
I mean, you know, he's got tattoos. He looks like a youth pastor at a cool church, man. Like a kid's church.
You definitely could trust those guys.
Like he works out, you know, he has Alpha Legends Gym and Fitness Center. I don't know, man. This guy's going to prison for embezzling stuff. But then, looking at it, it's all like secured, and basically what he would do is he would just raise more money to pay off the other people.
That's funny. That sucks that he's going to go to prison and he only did it for $11 million. Like, that is not a lot of money to be going to prison.
Nah, for sure. Yeah. For like, honestly, if you look at these other ones like Matt Onofrio, you guys haven't got caught in that. If you guys were in the real estate space at all, like, I don't know what, a year ago, you heard about this dude, Matt Onofrio, everywhere, who went from $0 to $150 million in net worth in like 3 years. And he was on like Bigger Pockets, like he was like on Ryan Pineda, he was on every single platform. And then all of a sudden, none of you guys even noticed if you weren't like sort of in this community, but he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And it's because he got indicted for over $100 million in bank fraud for all the shit that he was doing. This is like in November of last year. And now he finally actually just got proven, I guess, like charged with it. And his initial charge is like seven years in prison and like $30 million paid back in penalties. And then they're like pursuing more charges that are like up of like, I think it's like 60 or 70 million, and then potentially 30 years in prison, which is crazy. But if he avoids that, okay, he avoids the, 30 years in prison and the 70 million, and all he gets is seven years and 30 million in fines, the dude's going to get out and still have freaking $100 million. And he's like 32 right now, so he'll be under 40. So who cares?
Well, I mean, okay, your logic isn't terrible here. You got good logic here. I am wondering though, how are his assets performing now that is it really worth that much, or is it? But
his whole thing was he was wholesaling these triple net properties. Remember, by like faking these leases and like putting in like fake dental offices. Like he was like buying all the stuff to like put into the office and make like a dentist's office, and then was wholesaling that to people, like, you know, unsuspecting rich people that wanted to own triple net commercial, and he was making insane assignment fees, right? And what he ended up getting popped for is what he would do is he would be like, okay, cool, so the assignment fee is going to be $4 million. The down payment is $3 million. You don't have $3 million. So what you're going to do is we're going to close it. Okay, I was going to say, I'm going to lend you the $3 million to close it. Then I'm going to collect the $4 million for an assignment fee. And then I'm basically going to carry a second position for that $3 million that I loaned you, right? And get additional cash flow that way. So he's off the books. He just holds paper, right? But you can't do that unless the lender approves of it. And then obviously like putting in the fake dentist offices and stuff is like super illegal.
Right.
But ultimately, if he's just been accumulating cash and he has to pay $30 million and goes to jail for 7 years and he gets out, he's 38 years old and he's kind of a weirdo anyway, so he doesn't have kids or a wife that he cares about. Yeah. He's going to come out and go and speak on stages. He's going to be Jordan Belfort out there pounding his chest.
My guess is he'll get a shit ton of civil lawsuits against him after that, and he'll be found liable. I think that's what they call that in a civil lawsuit. Liable. Is that where they basically, it's like when you murder somebody and the jury's like, they're innocent, but the family's like, no, you murdered them, and then they go after you with a personal lawsuit, and then they sue you for that. Then you go, get sued or something for money. I don't know. So he'll probably have a bunch of those too.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But
somebody killed themselves over this situation. I'm pretty sure he'll get in trouble.
You'd think so? Yeah, I don't know what the full details of that were, but anyway, speaking of integrity, this is the integrity episode. But no, it's just moral of the episode today, guys. Is just be careful out there with anybody. Be careful with us. Like if you ever get a DM from me just cold asking you for money, it's not me. That's the general
It's not me.
Yeah, you have someone that's like
I'm not going to cash out you for some money.
Yeah, Mike _invest_. If I ever approach you with a great opportunity to invest in cryptocurrency at a 24% return, it's not me.
Right.
Anyways, but yeah, it's getting that time when the market gets weird. People start to get weird, so be careful out there.
People get weird.
But, cool. Right on. Anything to finish up, Dan?
No, man, this is a good episode. I'm glad I got my dose of integrity. I'm back on track. I know what to do next.
Back on track. You know what not to do. Don't be like this dude,
Yep.
Matt Motil, and as the cash flow king. Also, what a douchey name. Come on. Cash flow king. I like it.
Yeah.
So should have some way cooler, like collecting keys. That's way better. But
That's a much less egotistical name.
It's like much like a branded name. Like it's something that sounds like it should be for like a bigger company than we are. Maybe.
Totally. I like it.
I feel like it. Anyways, all right, guys. Well, thanks for listening.
Collective keys.
Collective keys. What's that? Is that actually a thing?
That's what people call us sometimes. I'm like, nah, that's wrong.
Yeah, maybe it's because I always talk and I have a weird mumble, so people don't know what the fuck I'm saying. Good thing I've chosen audio as my content of choice I like to make because I can't talk correctly. Yeah. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening to the ramble of today's show, and go out there and act with integrity and make sure that you double check everyone that asks you for money and make sure that they're actually going to do what they tell you they're going to do. But besides that, please go and share the show with anyone who's interested in real estate investing or making money, or just wants to know about the risks of investing with third-party operators out there. Because if you got like older people or friends or family that have like, moving all their money to self-directed IRAs, like give them to their neighbor's kid that has a fund, definitely help them investigate that to make sure that they aren't doing something stupid, because that is where the opportunity is at if you want to embezzle some money right now, let me tell you. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.